I've been more intentional about what I wear day to day, leaning into pieces that feel easy, comfortable, and still put together. It just makes getting dressed simpler. And Quince is a great go to for that. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are clean, and everything just works without needing to overthink it. I love when the seasons changed and I get to rediscover some Quince clothes in my closet. Just rediscovered a great white button down shirt I have from Quince that'll go well with my travel pants. Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than you'd find at similar brands. Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middleman so you're getting premium material without the markup. Think 100% European linen shorts and shirts from $34, lightweight, breathable, and comfortable, but still look put together and clean. 100% Prima cotton tees with a softness that has to be felt. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/traveler for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/traveler for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know that one friend who always finds the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach? Smart Travel is like that friend, but in podcast form. They cover all things finance, like which travel cards earn their keep and which are just heavy, shiny metal, the quick math for knowing when to pay with points or just swipe the credit card, planning group trips that won't ruin your budget or your friendships. If you haven't heard the story about friends who won't speak to each other after a one-week vacation together, buy me a Diet Coke sometime and I'll tell you. The nerds at NerdWallet know this stuff better than me, and that's why I feel great about recommending the Smart Travel podcast. After all, we nerds have to stick together. Travel smarter and spend less with the help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts. Amateur Traveler, episode 996. Today, Amateur Traveler talks about plazas, parks, and pre-Columbian art, wine, street art, and the disappeared as we go to Santiago, Chile. This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler. Let's talk about Chile. I would like to welcome back to the show Kristin Henning from TravelPast50.com. And Kristin has come to talk to us today about Santiago, Chile. Kristin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
And I understand I can call you Chris, and I hope that's not going to be confusing for anybody. If I say Chris, I mean Kristin.
Can I call you Chris?
Sure, please do.
All right, great.
So what's your connection with Santiago, Chile?
I first met Santiago in 2011. And at that time, my husband and Travel Past 50 cohort, Tom Bartel, and I were living in Ecuador, and we weren't travel blogging yet. We were just getting our feet on the ground. We'd been in Ecuador for about 9 months, and we thought, okay, it's time for a change. So we went to Santiago, possibly looking for work, teaching English to support ourselves. But in the end, we just really fell in love with it. We ended up getting an apartment and staying for 4 months. We never did get that teaching job, but we decided at that point we were going to move on to travel writing. And so that was at the beginning of that curve for us. But in that time, and I think this happens with a lot of people, we did travel, I did specifically, more than Tom, to Patagonia in the south of Chile and to the Atacama Desert in the north. Mm-hmm. We saw a lot of Chile, but we were based in Santiago, and it became pretty clear over the years that so many people visit Chile for Patagonia and more recently for the Atacama as well, but they don't really spend a significant amount of time in Santiago. And we just think it's a really great destination. And fast forward to this past year, some friends of ours here in Minneapolis wanted to do a getaway to Buenos Aires, and they were interested in wine and tango and food. And we agreed to help them put their itinerary together, but we really suggested that they add on Santiago, and they were thrilled that we did because there's a lot to see there. And it's just a different mindset for a lot of North Americans to visit South America versus Europe. So
Cool.
for that reason, I recommend Santiago as an add-on to Buenos Aires if people are doing an urban itinerary. And it is very distinct from Buenos Aires, which we can talk about, but it's got a lot in its own right, and it's strategically located so you can get to the mountains quickly, you can get to the valley for wine tasting quickly, you can get to the coast and Valparaíso and beach towns quickly. But Santiago itself does hold a lot of interest in its museums and culture and climate.
Excellent. I think you answered my why should you go in part of that. So let's skip on to what itinerary you're going to recommend for us.
I'm going to recommend a week, at least 5 days to a week in Santiago and the vicinity. And roughly half of that would be in the city, and 2-3 days might be day trips out of the city. Okay. In Santiago itself, I would break that itinerary down in some easygoing ways. One day is going to be parks because the city has some fabulous parks, huge parks, new parks, and a massive park that's around the city landmark of the San Cristobal Hill, which is right in the middle of the city with the statue of Jesus on the top, like you see in a lot of South American cities. But behind that hill is a massive metropolitan park. They close off the streets on weekends so that cyclists and pedestrians have free reign, as they do in other major streets in the city, which is a wonderful feature. And there's a zoo. It's just a wonderful place for families, and people flock there any day of the week. And it's that and another giant park called the Bicentennial Park are really worthwhile ways of seeing how people move about and how their families interact. And it just feels very personal when you get to a city's parks instead of the predictable tourist destinations in a city. I'm leading with that. A day or more in Santiago's parks is well spent. Of course, another day in my book is devoted to museums, primarily 2 museums that really touch me. One is the Pre-Columbian Art Museum, and this is Pre-Columbian art from all of Latin America, but with a special emphasis on the Chilean communities. The native community in the Chile region are the Mapuche. That is the name of the river through Santiago, now more of a canal, and the native community. But it's a wonderful museum with really extremely high quality work, Pre-Columbian work, which of course means before Columbus. Maybe not obvious to everyone.
I appreciate you clarifying.
So you'll see textile work and ceramics and wood and jewelry. It's a really great representation. The other museum is a much newer museum. I think it only opened within the last 10, 12 years, is the Museum of Remembrance and Human Rights, Museum of Memory, or if you want to translate it that way. And that is the story of the terrible period from 1973 when the overthrow of Allende by Pinochet was in 73, and the country lived under that oppressive regime until 1990. So this museum is the story of the thousands who were disappeared at that time or imprisoned. It's just a tragic episode in this country's history. Not the only one, but definitely one. And the museum is fabulous, expressive way of memorializing those who are dead or disappeared, but also really bringing to light the handiwork, for example, of men, women, and children who were imprisoned. And they have their documentation and a lot of firsthand testimonials. It's a great museum. I would recommend English speakers use an audio tour because the didactic in that museum is not great in Spanish. There are other museums and churches that are worthwhile visiting, but those 2 are really the highlights of the museum area of Santiago. Another day or two in Santiago, in my itinerary, is just spent wandering. There are some great neighborhoods. The first is Bellavista. It happens to be the neighborhood at the base of the San Cristobal Hill. It's where Tom and I rented and lived for several months. There's a college area. It's gotten to be, according to our friend in Santiago, maybe a little rough around the edges at night, but we stayed in that neighborhood as well. Bellavista is famous for its murals, its street lined with artwork on building to building, much some of your listeners may have seen in Valparaíso. But
Right.
in Santiago, it's in one neighborhood down by the river, and it's just a lot of fun. Now that is full of restaurants and bars and activity. So it's a lot of fun.
And that double L in Bella Vista fooled me because when you see it spelled as Bella Vista, it's a little clear that we're talking about a neighborhood with a good view.
That is correct. Yes, thanks for that clarification. Yeah, and we won't get into, if you're in Argentina, then it's Beja.
That's a whole different show.
That's a different accent. Yeah, and the other neighborhood nearby Bellavista is called La Staria. And La Staria is between Bellavista and the old historic center. It's just great restaurants, really high quality restaurants and boutiques and art pop-up artist stands on the street. Many of us bought a little something from artists just set up on the street there.
Okay.
There are two other neighborhoods I'll just mention quickly. One is the old center city with the government buildings, the central square that marks the very beginning of Chile. And the cathedral is there. Not much to see, but it's a plain old big cathedral. And the Plaza de Armas. But moving on to the government center, you can also find a great cultural center there that's a gallery of artisan works. And finally, the modern neighborhood, where I think a lot of people now are likely to find their hotels, is in Las Condes or Providencia, which are the opposite side of central Santiago from the old district.
Okay.
Still very easy to get to. It's very modern. The skyscrapers are there. The newest tourist attraction in Santiago is this more than 300-foot tall skyscraper, which is now the tallest building in Latin America.
And I see that some locals call it Sanhattan, this neighborhood.
Oh, is that right?
Which I like. That's pretty fun.
It's, I would say, shinier and glassier than Manhattan, but it is the modern skyscraper section, and there are shopping malls, great restaurants. It's easy to get around, and there's a very good metro system in Santiago to ferry you from one side of town to the other.
Got it.
So those are days within Santiago. It's really just exploring the neighborhoods, which is the heart of the city, and then planning your day trips out. So for the rest of the itinerary, you let me know what you'd like to hear more about, but definitely a day in wine country.
That's the day that's going to get my wife to come with me, is that day in the wine country.
Yes, and nothing wrong with that. And I also really find, I think our best meals of our last trip to Chile were right there in the middle of the vineyards.
And what do you recommend for that day? Do you have particular vineyards that you recommend or resources that you use when you go back? Or
I do. You can book your vineyard tours on your own, or you can go with a group. But I think the standout vineyard for us was Montes, Montes, and they have just a really great restaurant. It's a top shelf restaurant. It's called Viña Montes, and the restaurant is called Fuegos de Apalta. Fuegos being fire, and they do they have multiple fires going for one for meat, one for fish, one for vegetables,
Got
and
it.
so
Okay.
forth. It's a wonderful restaurant. And you are literally sitting open air in the middle of the vineyard. So it's a lot of fun. So we'd recommend that. And that, coincidentally, I didn't know where exactly we were booked at one of our vineyards. And our friend in Santiago said, "Oh, you have to go to this one and eat lunch there." So we were booked to visit it, but not for lunch. And we were able to quickly use her recommendation. So that one comes highly recommended. The other one that we visited was Viu Manent. And these are both, we can put the link in and the program notes to our write-up that mentions these two vineyards. That one, our group really enjoyed as an introduction to the wine of this region, because it's deceiving. The Colchagua Valley is this region of Chile, and there are some quick changes in altitude and soil. So it's within what looks to us like a fairly small vineyard, there can be really 3 different sorts of soil and climate issues contributing to differences in the wines there. So this Viu Manent explained that very well. So that was a fun visit and good tasting. Chilean wines are a great value. And
Right.
people may realize that from their experience in the North America wine shops. But when you get there, you really realize how diverse their red wines are, which I was reminded again of on this visit. And they're really known for the Carmenere wine, which is one of those that was the recovered vines after the plague in Europe. They had these that they were able to keep.
And when you say the plague, you mean the phylloxera,
yes.
not the Black Death.
Not the Black Death, the
Okay.
one that hit the vineyards, yes.
Yeah, which was the fungal infection that destroyed a lot of the vines in Europe, yeah.
And so the Carmenere and some cabs are definitely the product of that protected environment in Chile, avoiding the disaster of the French vines at that time.
Okay, got it.
We didn't visit this time, but the other well-known valley or area is Casablanca. And if people are really interested in it, I would recommend maybe even spending a night down in Santa Cruz and visit some wineries down in that area too. That's a very doable. We did that on our first visit to Santiago area. We spent a week.
And is that sort of Chile's Napa or Sonoma region there?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
Sorry, that's the way Californians think.
No, it's interesting that you bring that up, though, too, because the first time that I visited Santa Cruz, the only time, was 2011. So this was 1 year after the big earthquake, which was centered not that far from Santa Cruz. So we were literally walking around in some rubble that definitely the town had not been built up again. And the last time I was in Napa was after the earthquake there. If you remember that.
So you're saying you're bad luck?
I'm not.
No, you were
I
after.
arrive afterwards. I'm recovery.
Okay.
I'm helping in recovery.
Got it.
But it is a definite piece of Santiago and Chile's history. That year of 2010 was a big deal. They had the tsunami impact after the earthquake. And then later that year, there were the Chilean miners who were trapped for more than a month. So that segued into, if you want a little political history, into some unrest in 2019, and then followed quickly by the pandemic. There have been a lot of struggles, and I was so impressed with the way Santiago was operating and how its tourism was reinvigorated and very easygoing. It's a very easy place to get around and travel and very welcoming. And I read a line in Wikipedia that described it as nearly first world, which I thought was kind of a backhanded compliment, but it is first world. It's a nation's capital. It's a 7 million people metropolitan area. It functions perfectly well. But the perception among a lot of Americans in particular is that it is dicey that it's not quite there because of the political unrest in the past in Chile. So,
Yeah, no, Chile itself as a country, obviously, it's got a great variety just because it is so darn long and thin that you can find any climate, but it's not an uncomfortable country to travel in by any means.
no, not at all.
I don't know about you, but I like keeping my money where I can see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers also seem to like keeping my money too. Before Mint Mobile asked about being a sponsor in the show, I was already looking at Mint Mobile because what they offer, the same towers, the same service for less money, was something that appealed to me. After years of overpaying for wireless, I finally got fed up with crazy high wireless bills. At Mint Mobile, all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Bring your own phone and number, activate with eSIM in minutes, and start saving immediately. No long-term contracts and no hassles. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/traveler. That's mintmobile.com/traveler. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5 GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. And thanks to Mint Mobile for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. I'm a guy in my 60s, and that means growing up, skincare for me just meant washing my face, and we only wore sunscreen if we went to the beach. And so my skin has seen some wear and tear. That's one of the reasons I like OneSkin as a sponsor. Obviously, it's better if you start sooner than I did. OneSkin's results are backed by 4 peer-reviewed clinical studies, over 10,000 5-star reviews, and they've been recognized by Bloomberg as a leader in skin longevity. You don't really need a complicated routine to get healthier, younger-looking skin. Born from over a decade of longevity research, OneSkin's OS1 peptide is proven to target the visible signs of aging, helping you unlock your healthiest skin now and as you age. For a limited time, try OneSkin with 15% off using code TRAVELER at oneskin.co/traveler. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code TRAVELER. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support this show and tell them I sent you. And thanks to OneSkin for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Hey, sweetie, your mother showed me this Carvana thing for selling the car. I'm going to give it a try. Wish me luck. Me again. I put in the license plate. It gave me an offer. Unbelievable. Okay, I accepted the offer. They're picking it up Tuesday from the driveway. I haven't even left my chair. It's done. The car's gone. I'm holding a check. Anyway, Carvana, give it a whirl. Love ya.
So good, you'll want to leave a voicemail about it. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
And we should go back to the itinerary because there is one other big important day that I think I would recommend to anyone. And that is not just going out to the coast to see Valparaíso, but stopping at Isla Negra on the way. That is also on the coast. The name means Black Island, but it is not in fact an island. It's a town that was named because of the dark rock outcroppings along the coast. But this is where one of 3 Pablo Neruda homes is located. And I think by far the most interesting of his homes. Pablo Neruda was a Nobel Prize winning poet. He was also a statesman in Chile and in fact was instrumental in helping during the Spanish Civil War, helping Spaniards evacuate that. And he literally managed to put together a ship full of evacuees and helped them get to Santiago. He was a statesman, but he was a poet and just a fascinating guy. His home on the coast is so interesting because he researched maritime history. He's got a collection of ship figureheads, and it's position on the coast is beautiful. Everything reflects his love relationship with the woman named Matilda, and it's a museum unto itself. So we recommend that on the way to Valparaíso. These you have to reach by car or a tour bus. And when you get to Valparaíso, then you are in a UNESCO World Heritage Site city. It was recognized for it was the largest port on all South America on the Pacific side. Now its importance has been diminished since the Panama Canal was built, but it's just a fun town because it's on these steep hills, stairways and funiculars to go up and down. All the buildings are brightly painted, and the artwork in particular throughout the old town up and down the hill is phenomenal. It's an outdoor gallery.
Yeah, no, I quite enjoyed Valparaiso when I sailed into there on a cruise, and then we spent the day doing a private tour of the city and going up the funiculars and looking at different art pieces in the city.
That's nice. There is a street in Valparaiso that reminds me of Lombard Street in San Francisco. It's just the curly switchbacks for a block down this hill, which still you could only handle on foot, maybe a bicycle if you have your brakes on the whole time. But that street is called Alegria, which means happiness. And the whole community in Valparaiso is bohemian, and they have painted on the side of that switchback, "We're not hippies, we're happies," making a play on the calle, the Alegria Street.
But I see that it used to be that the sailors would call it Little San Francisco.
Ah, yeah, there you go. I did not know that.
You were not the first one who has made that comparison.
If people are interested in more of a beach experience, the lower part of Valparaiso is shipping. And it's like a lot of ports. It can be a little dicey around
Gritty?
the port. You don't spend a lot of time. Yeah, it's gritty. You
No.
don't spend a lot of time down in the lower areas of Valparaiso. But if people do want a beach experience, there's a little town further north on the coast called Concon. And that could be a day trip too. We spent a week there, I believe, when we were living there in 2011. But that's a great place to get a small town feel near Santiago if you want to get out of the city and experience the beach.
Very cool.
Should we talk about food?
We have not talked about food. We should talk about food.
Yeah. And we should talk about beverages other than wine, maybe. Wine is good, white or red. But to finish off the beverage category, there is the Pisco Sour,
Yep.
which both Chile and Peru claim their own, but the Chilean Pisco Sour is mighty good. We also encourage people to think of the limonada. The lemonade is a special treat there because they tend to serve it with ginger and mint. And it's really a limeade because lemon limes are pretty much the same. It's one thing in South America, one word and one thing. Yeah, those are good beverages. But for food, there's, of course, Chilean sea bass, the mighty perfect fish dish in my book. And it's really good. By the way, I think the environmentally conscious will maybe avoid salmon in Chile because by reports that I've read, it's farm raised and there are environmental issues with the way that they are raising salmon.
Okay.
So some locals advised me to avoid it for those environmental reasons, but I know people who ate it who were perfectly happy with it. Apart from the fish, there is a fantastic meat dishes, although they're not known for it like Argentina. The meat dishes are really good. They do a lot of breaded meat as well. Servings are giant. Choclo, which is the word for corn, is a common dish. It might be served in a humitas, which is like the tamale type of serving. That's good local dish. And of
Okay.
course, the vegetables like avocados in particular are excellent.
And we import a lot of blueberries, are the other thing that Chile is known for these days. A lot of
Yes.
the blueberries, especially in the winter time where I live, are all coming up from Chile.
Yep. We see that as well. Yes. Yeah, a lot of fruits and vegetables are so good. So that's the food story. We ate very well. We were fueled by wine. We had to eat well.
Anything else we want to talk about in terms of doing and seeing in Santiago or nearby?
One of the things that we might want to mention is that depending upon the time of year, and the seasons are reversed, which is another big advantage of going to South America in our North American winter.
So that does beg the question. Are there any particular day of the year that you would recommend being in Chile in the Santiago area for a festival or a holiday or something else that is particularly notable?
In fact, in the wine country, they do have vendimia festivals for the wine harvest, just as they do in Argentina. Chile has these festivals as well. So if you're really into the wine culture, do check the calendars to go then. But
So that would be in North American spring, Chilean or early autumn, probably.
It's going to be March,
Okay.
probably.
Makes sense.
Yep. And the other great day trip or week-long trip from Santiago is to the mountains. So I can't really pick a day, but it's good any time of year, because if you want to ski, you are just a couple hours from a great ski resort in the Andes Mountains, several ski resorts that are easy drive from Santiago. So I don't think we should be afraid of their winter, our summer travel too.
Well, the weather there strikes me as very similar to where I live in California kind of weather. So you're not talking about harsh winters or particularly hot summers. It's a fairly mild Mediterranean climate, which is why the wine is flourishing there.
That's true. The extreme heats are in Fahrenheit. Their record-setting temps are not even 100. So it's not the 40 degrees that you're going to see in southern Spain sometimes for heat. And their cold temperatures, yes, are rarely below freezing.
Yeah. It's not an area that in Santiago itself you go for the snow.
No, you definitely don't. We were there over the winter, and we were in the highs in the winter in the city of Santiago are just in
I'm guessing
50s.
50 Fahrenheit. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe high 60. The one thing to note, however, in time of year to travel to Santiago is that the air in Santiago in the winter, our summer, can be
stagnant,
really
and therefore
difficult.
Polluted.
Yes, because it's surrounded by mountains and that cold air comes in and it settles. They still have in the wintertime, we're talking to some people about this, the license plate placa,
even odd
even odd to pull back on the traffic in the winter.
Got it.
So they're aware of it, but that's the one environmental downside to Santiago's climate, is that in the winter it can be polluted.
Okay. Anything that the guidebooks recommend for Santiago that you would say skip?
I think all of the guidebooks will say to go to the top of the tallest skyscraper, which is called the Costa Nasa. But if you stay in a nice hotel in the same neighborhood, they probably have a rooftop bar that you can enjoy for free without lines. Go to a nice rooftop bar for your sunset and skip the more elaborate and pricey and crowded and security controlled skyscraper visit.
Okay. And speaking of which, any other budget tips for Santiago since you lived there?
Overall, it is a great value to travel in Santiago and throughout Chile. And I think Americans would like to know that you can sometimes use dollars. You can use dollars for tipping, for example. And dollars are accepted. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
Pesos are used and we change money, but they're certainly, if you're passing through and you don't have pesos, you can use dollars. ATM machines at banks are the way to go with that. As far as eating and hotels, you can find high-end and budget everywhere. The average restaurant is probably 60% cost of a meal at a restaurant in Santiago than, for example, here in Minneapolis. It's a good value. The wine's a good value, but the dishes, the plates are good value too. And that depends a little bit on the neighborhood you're in as well.
Yeah. Cool. As I think we're starting to wind this down, anything else we need to know before we go to Chile?
I think it's important to know that you can get by with English. If you don't know Spanish, you won't have trouble. It's easy to get around, and it's easy to get to. There are at least a half a dozen cities with direct flights from the United States to Santiago. The airport in Santiago is pretty close into the city. It's only 20 minutes to your hotel from the airport. So it's an easy place to travel. And I like the fact that even though it's a longer flight in hours, for me, for example, to fly to Santiago than to Madrid, I'm not changing as many time zones. So
yeah, absolutely.
It feels really easy to take a trip there and come back without getting out of whack in your time zone calendar. And for a lot of people struggle with that. So I've also just been, as people are talking about crowded places in Europe, but they're still going there. And I just want to open people's minds to the fact that there's some great cities in Latin America, Santiago being one of them. And for our demo, of course, with Travel Past 50, we're talking to an older demographic. The entirety of our travel is probably not going to be hardcore adventure. We'd love to do
not a lot of ice climbing
not
that
a
you're
lot of
covering
ice
on
climbing.
Travel Past 50.
Exactly, but we still do hiking and walking, and
sure.
But we want to break this up with some nice urban experiences, and that we love the history and culture, and that's the kind of traveler I think we're talking to today, who would really latch on to what Santiago has to offer. And I'll add one thing too, that again, it's a difference between Santiago and Buenos Aires, is that Chile as a whole blends in its indigenous culture more so, I would say, than Argentina. Argentina was much more European settled. And while Chile was colonized by the Spaniards, of course, its indigenous culture has still really remained embedded in modern culture, in the language and in the food. I like that. I like that difference between Chile and Argentina. I'm overgeneralizing, but that's really an experience you can get. And so those people who love to go to Mexico and explore indigenous cultures there are going to get that same sensibility in Chile, where they can really get the entire history, not just from a European standpoint.
Excellent. You were talking about the Santiago airport. One caution for people based on flying through Santiago was that if you're transiting to a domestic flight through the Santiago airport, you should know that the domestic airport and the international airport are basically across the street from each other. And so you have to get out of security, walk across the street, get back through security. And so just make sure that if you are transiting through Santiago, you won't have to worry about this if you're arriving. Leave enough time. We either missed a flight or almost missed a flight as we were coming back through Santiago because the time had not been calculated in the itinerary we were given.
Yeah, and I think the perception too is that for domestic or other flights in South America, that they're going to be little puddle jumper flights. That's not really the case. We flew from Santiago to Mendoza, and that's basically the equivalent of a 737. Your carry-on bags still fit in the overhead compartment, and it's fully modernized. It's not the Outback.
No, not at all. And as I recall, we actually talked our way back onto the flight. They'd already closed the door. So it was one of those things that we did not have enough time to make that connection. Give yourself another hour.
Good advice.
Excellent. As we go to wrap this up, Chris, you're standing in the prettiest spot in Santiago. Where are you standing? What are you looking at?
I'm standing at the far end of the Bicentennial Park, which is one of the newer parks that I've mentioned. There's water, there are botanical gardens, there are trees and green, there are trails, there are people and dogs and children and old people. And it's just a great scene of community with the skyline in the background. So I think that's great. And another would be from the funicular going up the Metropolitan Park to the back side of the San Cristobal Hill. Those
Excellent.
are both very good.
One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Santiago, Chile.
I love the fact that protests can burst out anytime, anywhere. Noise is a wonderful thing. And the protest might be a car or truck with a bullhorn, somebody just speaking out, or it could be a few dozen people with the cause of the day walking down the street. It's vibrant in protest as well.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize Santiago in just 3 words, what 3 words would you pick?
I did not prepare for that. I would say...
You should know better. You've been on the show before.
I should. That one just went by me. Historic, hilly, and sunny.
Excellent. Our guest again has been Kristin Hennings from TravelPast50.com. Kristin, if we want to send people to your best post on Santiago at TravelPast50.com, where are we sending them?
We're sending them to a fairly recent post called Santiago de Chile Itinerary. And
that sounds perfect.
We'll send you that link.
I will put that in the show notes so that people can more easily find it.
I would also like to send you a link for a book called Tales from the Sharp End, which is a wonderful bit of essays about Chile. Not exactly a guidebook, but really great reading if you're thinking of visiting Santiago or the rest of the country.
Excellent. I'll put that link in the show notes as well. Kristin, thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your obvious love for Santiago. And I look forward to seeing you. Kristin and I will be traveling together in Spain in something like a month from now. So,
thank you very much. I'll change my 3 words.
Oh,
okay. Historic, artsy, and sunny.
Excellent. Okay.
Send Help is now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
We're somewhere in the Gulf of Thailand.
Getting us out of here should be your focus. I'm your boss. You work for me.
We're not in the office anymore.
It's bold, relentless, and endlessly rewatchable. Discover why critics give it 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
You're so fired.
Oh, am I? No help is coming.
Send Help, rated R, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Have you ever had the urge to sneak behind the cordoned-off areas of a museum? Or roam the halls after closing time? The Smithsonian's flagship podcast, Side Door, will sneak you behind the scenes of the world's largest museum and research complex. Come learn about the ghosts that supposedly walk the museum halls after dark, how a train robbery gave rise to criminal forensics, why leeches are actually the coolest thing ever, and how to get away with murder in the Arctic. Maybe. You'll discover stories of history, science, art, and culture you won't find in a display case. You can listen to Side Door wherever you get your podcasts, or find us online at si.edu/sidedoor.
Thanks to Kristin for coming on the show, and a special thanks to the patrons of the show who help support Amateur Traveler financially. If you're interested in learning more about how you can become a patron of the show, go to patreon.com/amateurtraveler. I heard recently from Carla, who's a patron of the show, who commented on the episode we did on West Africa. Love this episode. As someone of Cape Verdean descent, I would love to visit Guinea-Bissau one day to learn more about this country's connection to Cape Verde. Carla, you and me both. If you're interested in learning more about the Amateur Traveler 2007 trip in May to Bolivia, go to amateurtraveler.com/trips to learn more or drop me an email. And then I got a comment from Jaunty Crane about a comment I read on the show. Somebody mentioned the area that I called Southwark. It's good to hear listener feedback at the end of the latest episode on London Hidden Gems. Note that in classic British style, Southwark is pronounced Southwark. Of course it is. And thanks, Jaunty. And with that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com or drop me an email to chris2x@gmail.com. And as always, thanks so much for listening.